Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people far and wide, and all of the DevCentral Connects community, welcome to this episode of DevCentral Connects. I'm John Wagnum with the DevCentral team, and I'm joined by my partner, I won't say in crime, I'll say in just awesomeness, Jason Rahm, this guy. How's it going, Jason?
It is going quite excellently, minus a small little detail. Plan to do a demo today. My laptop has crashed 5 times today, and so we will attempt the demo, but we may have to push that to another week depending on how it behaves later in this show. Jason,
it's like the computers just know. They just know in their minds, hey, it's demo time. Let me do this thing. So, for those that are watching today, there are those rare moments in life where you just get the pleasure of experiencing greatness. And today's show is going to give you that. We have some awesome content. And other than Jason's demo that he just talked about.
But I wouldn't talk it up that much just yet.
Right.
Let's wait for the end of the show to say how awesome Jason's content is.
That's right. It's it's going to be amazing. We've got a great guest that we're going to bring in just a few minutes, and just do some amazing things today. So, talking about some malware, some threat research. What's up with all these attackers out there, and what's going on in the world of security and the dark web and all that kind of stuff. So there's some great minds here at F5 that just specialize in that stuff. But before we get into that, Jason, I had to go off on a little soapbox that has nothing to do with computer stuff for a second.
Okay.
And I wanted to just say that recently I had to get a rental truck to help move a piano. It's an upright piano. And so I loaded this thing up on the truck and everything's fine. But then as I was driving the truck, I ran into a little bit of rain in the rental truck. And this is like one of these 16-foot, trucks. And I'm driving in the rain, and it just occurred to me that there is nothing more, nothing that does not get the attention of a company or an organization as much as the windshield wipers of a rental truck. It's like the worst possible experience in the world. If you could rank the priority order of like quality of material, whatever the bottom thing is, the windshield wipers on a rental truck is below that. I mean, we might as well paint the windshield black. I wiped the thing for the wipers, and it's just it's a horrible experience. So for all you rental truck companies out there, I know we have some. I know a lot of you watch this show, I'm sure. Let's up the game on those windshield wipers.
John, I think you're feeling a little entitled. I think you should be grateful to be paying the 50 cents a mile and the fact that it has an engine and you don't have to push it yourself.
Goodness. Yeah, let's lower the per mileage rate on that thing too. Okay, like I said, nothing to do with computers on that one, but I just experienced that in my life, and I thought, man, we got to fix that. We got to fix that windshield wiper problem. But anyway, so, I just had to throw that out there.
Boo. Yeah. Yes, 1,000 duck-sized horses. We joined Boo on his live stream earlier this week, and his icebreaker was, would you rather be attacked by 1,000 duck-sized horses or a single horse-sized duck? And of course, I went with the horses.
The duck size. Well, the idea was that if you know that the attack is coming in advance, then maybe you could wear like some steel-toed boots and like kick these things or something like that.
Yeah. Good set of a good pair of tactical pants and a calf high boot.
Right.
You have nothing to worry about.
Yeah,
because their teeth aren't sharp. It's not like you got those Jurassic Park 58 or whatever movie it was with the little ankle biter dinosaurs that took you down.
Yeah, no doubt. Yep.
And Sarah, I got tired enough. My wife trimmed me up a little bit, so and I got enough gel in there to make it look somewhat reasonable. So
a 55-gallon drum of hair gel will do wonders on any dude that's going on up there.
I can come back with the crazy next week, though.
That's right. So by next week it's probably grown out enough, So good stuff, man. Yep. Good stuff. Well, hey, so today we have the honor of a guest host who, in the lineup of guest hosts or guests to join this show, He is by no means on the rental car, rental truck, windshield wiper level. He is at the other end of that spectrum. And when I think about like famous, computer attack hackers, people, names like Kevin Mitnick come to mind, those kind of guys. And in that, maybe not in a criminal kind of way, but in the amazingness kind of way, in the, hey, I know what's going on kind of way, we have the director of F5 Labs, Mr. Ray Pompon, joining us today. So Ray, welcome to our DevCentral Connects show, and thanks for being here, man.
Oh, my pleasure. I've been watching your videos for years, so it's well, not this show, obviously, because it's new, but been enjoying your explainer videos a lot.
Some of the light board lesson.
Light board. I was going to say light speed, but I'm like, no, wait.
Light speed. Yeah. Or maybe one day we'll go into ludicrous speed. If you've ever seen Spaceballs, just go straight to ludicrous speed.
There are a few people that have asked us to be light speed. Like, dude, you guys talk so slow. It's like, come on, we're writing. Yeah. I can't write and chew gum and draw at the same, or speak at the same time. So.
You can always speed up the video, right? I showed my son that because he's got all these Zoom classes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they do. It's like I play you at 1.5 speed, and it's great.
And it sounds it sounds awesome.
So Peter, thank you for being on here and sharing details. Like always, Peter helping us out in the chat, and he mentioned your Twitter handle here, right, Dunsany. Yeah. So, I was doing a little research, and there's a Castle Dunsany, there's an author, Lord Dunsany, Edward Plunkett. And so which path are you going down with that?
They're both the same guy. Well, actually, the writer guy inhabited that title. It's something he inherited over time. So Lord Dunsany himself is the most famous because he's a writer. And he's sort of considered like one of the writers, you should say, that inspired like Tolkien and Neil Gaiman and those guys. So I was kind of shooting high back when Twitter first started. Everybody chose lots of fun names and handles, and that was like, and I was early on, so I kind of like, oh yeah, I was an aspiring writer, so I chose Dunsany.
Nice, oh, fantastic.
What's your favorite book?
Ooh, that's a hard question. By Dunsany, King of Elfland's Daughter.
Okay.
It's if you read it, you'll see a lot of other writers and stories, and like, oh, okay, they're kind of lifting from that or riffing on that idea.
Yeah,
yeah. I saw he's like a lot of early like high fantasy, and so I may pick out a couple of his books and check them out. Because I do like, writers in the vein of Tolkien. And if that guy inspired Tolkien, well, I'm a fan of his work.
Yeah. We're all standing. Yeah, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? So Tolkien stands on Dunsany's shoulders. That's amazing. That's good to know.
2X guy. All right, Jeff. 2-speed.
Jeff,
wow.
Jeff is nice. He is at ludicrous speed. Jeff, how do you even understand? Goodness, that's amazing. Well, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, hey, so Ray, we wanted to hop into F5 Labs. So I know you are the director of F5 Labs at F5, obviously. And so for those that don't know much about F5 Labs, we wanted to go through some of the history. F5 Labs has not always been around, like since the beginning of F5 networks. And so maybe give us a little history, or like what was the motivator for why F5 Labs needed to be formed and some of that.
Sure. Well, actually, the hint is actually F5 Labs itself. The name goes way back because that was the original name of F5, and that's kind of where it was taken from.
Cool.
F5 Labs itself has been around since around 2016. We actually launched a full website in January 2017. But really, it's the idea of doing threat research and providing sort of back to the security community more detailed information about what was going on. I like to say, like, F5 has got security products and security services and security consulting and all these things going on everywhere all the time. And intelligence kind of comes out like sawdust. It just sort of like just the work we do, all these really interesting nuggets of what's going on. And so we were created to sort of collect all that information and share it back out with the security community. And it's basically very pure, so we don't actually do anything about product. I actually don't know a whole lot about product, other than I was an F5 customer for many decades, and have, loved the big red ball in my racks. But if you were to ask me about like how to configure a WAF or something, I have to go watch your Lightboard videos to do that. So labs is really about, collecting intelligence. And like I said, we get a lot of it from around F5, but we also look at external sources. We look at F5 partners. We look at our own partnerships. The entire staff of F5 Labs are all security people. We're all, either done former security work or tech work. And so we're really not people who are like going to be talking a lot about, marketing or product or sales. We're just, purely like, this is the industry, this is what we understand, and then we're sharing that back out. So we do, a lot of big reports. We do the big App Protect report. We do IoT DDoS reports, the TLS report about encryption. So, we kind of get deep into security topics that users care about. Yeah. And then I run another little segment off it called CISO to CISO, which is the idea of CISOs talking to CISOs, and not necessarily all CISOs, but people aspiring CISOs, people who are CISOs to be interested in. So it's like best practices stuff, lessons learned, things going on in the industry. Like we've got a big thing going on compliance right now, which I know is actually a huge deal for a lot of customers. And then we've recently launched an educational section because we've also found a lot of folks are coming to F5 Labs just to learn about security and understand these topics. And we just launched one of our first Capture the Flags for API, which has been a lot of fun.
That's amazing. Yeah, Capture the Flags are always a hit with the crowd. So that's really cool to know that's out there. Yeah, really cool.
We've gone to a local security thing over here in St. Louis and done a Capture the Flag, and those are a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved how you said you guys are not product specific. In fact, if someone asked you to go configure a big IP or a WAF or whatever, you'd have to go like flip through the manual like everybody else. So I think that there's something special about that, about the purity of saying, hey, I'm just going to research the malware or the threats that are out there, and I'm not coming to you with a big, hey, here's more F5 stuff right in your face. This is just a industry general, industry relevant security research that you guys need to know about. I think that's really cool.
Well, and I think you build credibility with your audience that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it was a big draw for why I came to F5 Labs. It was, I was really interested. It was like, I don't know much about F5 other than being a customer, but I'm very interested in doing research, like finding what the bad guys are doing and sharing that, speaking about that, writing about that, going deep into the data. And, it was really a chance to geek out on something, an aspect of security that to me is like the most fun part. Yeah. Because if you're often, if you're a security operational guy, you're fighting fires, you're dealing with budgets, you're arguing, like, no, we got to do this. No, we can't do that. It's like, no, I just got to get the focus on the fun stuff.
Speaking of that, what's maybe an older attack, maybe early career that really peeled back the onion for you? It's like, holy crap, how vulnerable are we really?
Because I did a lot of security in my career even before it was called security, but
before it was cool, right? You were security before security was cool.
Well, if anybody remembers the stoned virus, I was stomping that down back at the University of Hawaii, and it was just like, it's not another machine. But I guess the big wake up call was probably like maybe 24, 25 years ago. I was newly minted security at a large financial, and I got a call in from the help desk. Actually, it was the help desk of the IT help desk, and they're like, "We have this call from customer service that we don't know what to do with. It's been bouncing around internally, like what to do with this service call for about a day or two, and we thought we'd ask you guys in security or in IT because we're not sure what we want to do with this thing." And I'm like, "Well, send me the ticket." And I'm like, "Why am I getting something from a customer?" And remember, this is the late '90s, so I get this thing. And it's like, I'm trying to log into your website and it's really not working. And I'm like looking at the website and I'm like, this says Angel Fire. Like I go to the website, like, that's not our website. Somebody took our internet banking website and duplicated it.
Wow. And
I was like, oh my. And then it's like, it was like one of those, like pick the phone up, like, oh my God, how long has this been happening? It's like, oh, this ticket's been bounced around for 2 days. I'm like, there's scripts on this site that are pulling people's passwords down. I don't know what this is. And then we had the FBI in, and they're like, oh yeah, the trail went off to Mexico, and they're like, we can't follow it. And I'm just like, oh wow. And it's like, and there's nothing we could do about it. Like, and then we figured out that they actually sent a mailing list. They found a mailing list of our customers and sent them all this email, like, come to our website. And I was like, wow, these guys are really tricky. And that was my first exposure to what we call phishing now, which we still see as the number one cause of breach. It's just like 25 years later, but it's just like that kind of idea. Like, it just, you've done all these things and then something just hits you out of left field and you're just like, what just happened? And there's nothing I can do about it except react. And that's been my whole career of that. Like, what just happened?
Something crazy just went down. I can do nothing about it.
Speaking of phishing attacks, I had a question. One of the stats that came out of the F5 Labs research, I don't know if it was a keynote or one of the breakouts, but they mentioned that 34% of attacks are insider threats. Is phishing, like an employee opening a phishing attempt, part of that insider threat, or is that malicious insiders?
So when we talk about insider attacks at F5 Labs, we're talking about malicious insiders. Some security reporting and professionals will mix the two together, which to me is confusing because I although the prevalence of phishing is out there and people click on things and yes, you become that person. I don't think they're not doing it on purpose. That's not an insider. They're being tricked.
Right.
And so, it doesn't help me in my statistics or in my planning because when I deliver what we call security intelligence and threat intelligence through F5 Labs, I think about a big component is actionable. I think about what can you do about this? Mm-hmm. This comes in, what am I going to do? And if it was in a malicious insider, well, then I'd be a lot more scrutinizing who I'm hiring and what they're doing versus like an accidental insider would be different. Like, okay, I need to make sure I'm scraping email and I'm educating people not to click the wrong things. So yes, it gets confusing, but like I said, we try to make it as clear as possible so that people know exactly what they do to stop the pain.
Okay. Well, that makes that stat even more shocking for me then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that's.
Did we ever say that 34%? That seems a rather high number for something Labs would say.
Yeah,
I think it was in one of the breakouts. I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah, from Agility or whatever. Yeah. It's it's interesting that you talk about phishing is still the number one because a lot of people today think, hey, I mean that ship has sailed, and we all know not to click on that link. In fact, it looks like Christos has a couple of really cool comments there about, hey, look at the domain. Is this actually coming from where you think it's going to come from? Is the email sender address is it j.wagnon@f5.com or is it j.xyz123 at abcdef.co or whatever, some weird crazy thing. But Ray, I mean, I don't know if I know you guys have the phishing and fraud report that came out not long ago. And it's just, I don't know, it's fascinating to me that that's still the number one threat that we see. And maybe it just gets to the heart of how successful that still is. So I don't know, maybe you could speak to that for a second. Like, why is that still so successful? And I don't know, is that really the motivation behind why that's the number one because of its success rate?
It's easy, low-hanging fruit. If you look at like the advanced persistent threat, the super spies of the internet, what do they do first? They try spear phishing because they know it works. One of the things we did in one of our phishing and fraud reports is we actually went down and showed you how to do it. And some of it is like, well, I'm going to go create an account called John Wagnum at yahoo.com and send that. So people will be like, oh, this is John. And they'll take legitimate emails that come out from large companies like Microsoft or Google or Facebook, and then they'll just, instead of the old misspellings and bad domains, they'll duplicate those, and maybe they'll register a domain that looks like it. And there's a bunch of tricks they can do with either in the URL bar itself, or even just like choosing names that kind of like trick people. And the whole thing about like don't click on links from people you don't know. Well, sure, but they'll pretend to be people you know as well. And often, and we found this in our stats as well in our latest breach report, is like at least 4% of the phishing attacks. They would break in, they would steal somebody's mailbox, and then they would turn around and fish that back out.
Okay.
Yeah, and And so it's like, that's a completely legitimate email from a legitimate address. And then, of course, the payload in it has got some little nasty.
Wow. So that's
Yeah.
a pretty clever little trick. Yeah. So break into the email and then send it out from the legitimate email.
Yep.
Right. And I've worked cases in a previous life where, we just saw a comment. People don't know what a domain is. People don't know these things. We had a situation where this company called us in, and it was like, hey, our firewall is down. Can you come help? And I show up and I'm like, your firewall is overloaded because there's so much malware on the network that it's flooding the firewall outbound, trying to send all your data out. And they're like, oh. I'm like, well, what happened? It was like, well, we kind of worked it back as like, oh, we got an email. It went to the CEO, like, here's your financials and blah, blah, blah. And, just click this and open this. And the CEO couldn't get it open because it was installing malware. So we forwarded it to the the CFO and like, can you get this open? And the CFO was like, no, I can't get this open. I'll forward that to the IT guy. And the IT guy's like, oh my God, what have you done? But then the whole network was just toast.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone in the C-suite.
Yeah. Every C-level executive has now opened this. So IT guy, here, it's in your lap now.
Right.
Fantastic.
And my advice about security awareness training is just close the loop on that as fast as you can. They're going to click on something, at least have them try to call the IT guy the first thing.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, we spent 2 days trying to track down that fish at the financial. It was the same thing. It's like, can we at least shorten that time so we can contain the damage?
Yeah. Hey, that makes me think of something really quick. You talk about try to minimize that gap between, spear phishing coming in or phishing coming in and then alerting IT or whatever. And it makes me think about the educational part of this. And maybe this is not a question, more just kind of a comment. I know for me personally, sometimes I click through that education, hey, I got to go through the web-based training or the computer-based training. It's like, man, I'm just trying to click to get through this, to get to the end certificate, right? And then tell my boss, all right, I'm done. So I don't know if if people have studied, like, what is the actual good education piece to effectively educate our end users, because it's still number one after 25 years. So anyway.
That is a thing. Having been a CISO security guy for decades, I actually enjoy security awareness training. It's a chance to talk to the users, to directly interact with them. And we've actually written about this on Labs. It's like, you're only going to be able to deliver maybe 1 to 3 messages. So don't give them like, an hour-long video with all this stuff in it. Like, what's the difference between a Trojan horse and a self-replicating virus? And it's just like, oh, who cares? Just think about like, what actionable decisions can you want that user to make? And it goes back to like, if you see something, say something. If you get a weird email, just tell us, ask us, and then closing the loop.
Mm-hmm.
But education is a hard one, and we have found statistics with one of our partners, Web Group, to show that it does reduce from 33% to I think like 13% the amount of clicking that people do, but you have to keep it up.
That's cool.
I like the pragmatic approach personally. I like the places that the spearfish their own organization, and it's adaptive in that if you tend to be a click monster, then you get more of those. But then rather than it be a slapping your hand, don't do this. It's a, hey, these are the things that we specifically targeted you for, and here are the ways that you can protect yourself against that in the future. And if you continue to click, well, then maybe there's some remedial beyond training. It's like, well, we trust you with a lot of access in this company, and if you continue to make the same mistakes after we've continued to target you in the same way, then maybe we need to pull some access away until then you hit a certain number of things. But I like the practical exercises approach more than the animated little office people.
No doubt.
Right, and what is it going to buy you anyway? I mean, you get back to the practical, like, well, how can I turn this ship? What little things can I do to enlist the users to help me make us more secure? And it gets right down to like, what things do you want them to do? What decisions, what headspace do you want them to be in?
Yeah. It's a challenge. There's no question about it, but it's, so I guess for all those watching this, the reason we keep taking this phishing training is because it's the number one attack, vector still out there. It's crazy, man. I just can't even believe that. Yeah, there's Marius talking about in the last 3 days, he's got 5 phishing attempts on his phone through messaging. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they know his number. They know the apps he's got. It's like, man, Big Brother is definitely watching, seems like. But yeah.
And Daniel, yes, somebody called it out and noticed it.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So every now and then we'll put a little Easter egg in there for a background. So Good job.
Daniel, we would simply tell you, turn it off and turn it back on. So good to
we
go,
were talking about that before the show.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Anything.
And Christos, yes, thank you. My wife got me that for Christmas. She knows me well.
Yeah, she is the CSS to Jason's HTML.
Yeah.
Good to go. Hey, so Ray, a couple of other reports I wanted to highlight too. I know we've talked about the phishing and fraud report. You guys have the TLS telemetry report out there on Labs. You've got the new App Protect report, which you helped author. Frankly, you may have helped author all these. I didn't check the exact authorship, but maybe give us just a really quick. What can we expect if we were to go out and read either the TLS telemetry or maybe the App Protect?
The App Protect's our big report.
Okay.
So that one's got it's everything you wanted to know about application security for the past year, and we basically have discovered that the trending is just continuing. Even the pandemic just turned up the volume on certain things, but it's still the same old lessons about like how are bad guys getting in. That's really was my focus. But I look at other reports out there, it gets back to that pragmatic thing about like, well, what can I do about this? What actions can I take? And that's kind of the thought process we had behind writing this report. So it's a lot. You'll see the detail from actual local or U.S. breach cases about what's going on. And it's a lot of phishing. And frankly, it's because we think we've gotten better at security. And so they'll attack the user. They'll attack the weak link.
Okay.
And then a lot of web form hijacking or the mage cart attack. Where they're basically injecting essentially a software skimmer to grab people's credit cards as they enter them in shopping carts. So we've just continuing to see a trend of that. And now that we're in the pandemic, there's a lot more e-commerce going on, so that you're going to see more of that.
Yeah.
At least at a gas pump, I can yank on the little thing and pull it off, but can't exactly do that on an electronic shopping cart.
No, you can't.
Right, exactly. Right, and it just bypasses a lot of what you would traditionally look for, even on the website itself. We kind of break this down in the report in a little more detail, because a lot of those third-party widgets can get compromised, and those are things that the website itself doesn't even see. I'll think the simple example is the old hit counters. Those are actually being run somewhere else off the website. But if you were to compromise a hit counter, you could actually then inject code when people bring that site up. You could actually have new code coming back into that site. And of course, that site doesn't even know, because on the site itself, there's just an HTML link to go get the hit counter code over there. Bring it back. So it's a great way to shovel in some little nasty thing.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating. I remember some of on the TLS telemetry report one. I remember in I don't think it's this latest one, but maybe a previous one talked about just the prevalence of the different versions of the TLS protocol that are being used today. And even this, again, maybe it was the last one, but there was still a lot of SSL v2 out there. And I don't know if that's kind of starting to kind of, go by the wayside, or is there still some older?
It is starting to go by the wayside. And a lot of that stuff you've seen is because people just kind of throw services and servers up and don't really, configure them.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, this is fine. And then, something happens. It's like, oh, wait, maybe it's not fine. Maybe I missed something. But, that could be down the road. Oftentimes that comes in from the outside.
Yeah.
Where, hey, your site's running really crappy encryption. Can you fix that?
No doubt.
But yeah, we are definitely seeing things getting a lot more tighter and a lot more encryption in general. And as you say, the other side is the bad guys have gotten better too. They're using more and more legitimate certificates on their phishing.
Yeah. So you get a legitimate certificate, signed, certificate or whatever, and it comes in as a phishing attempt, and it's like, hey, this looks pretty legit. Which, we could talk a long time about the whole certification authority, revocations, and all that.
That's the good and bad of like a Let's Encrypt, right? They make security free, and people can go secure everything. That's really good because it secures their traffic end to end, but it also provides a free platform for the bad guys too.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess a hint to hiring managers and aspiring security professionals. That was always a good interview question we used to use, was just tell me about, how a certificate works on the internet. And you could really kind of like at least judge somebody's technical ability just from that question and there's a lot of places they could go and how deep they would go.
Yeah.
But you would get some guys who just vapor lock, like there's a lock on the screen. I'm like, okay. And you're a security guy with some certifications.
Right. Yep. No, you're right. That's
study your certificates.
Right. Yeah, get a certification and certificates. Yeah.
Well, on the questions front, one of the other questions I wanted to ask you is that, when you speak to people about security, what are some of the questions that people don't ask that they really should be asking?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that one.
Jason, you should not have asked that. Maybe you should have. Jason did ask.
I would like people to beat me up on my data more. I'd like people to ask me about how I got my data and why I came to these conclusions. Because those are the questions I always ask whenever there's a lot of security reporting out there. A lot of other vendors are putting material out there to say, like things like insiders are 80% of the threat.
Yeah.
Or, this, everybody is doing this vulnerability, or, the encryption's terrible on the internet. I'm like, well, how do you believe that? Can you explain where your data came from? And we try to be as absolutely transparent as we can on labs. Yeah. But I'm like, I would love to have those discussions. As a matter of fact, when I give talks in smaller, more kind of geeky venues, like at, say, your ISC squared meetings, and I actually am doing an OWASP chapter next week, we'll get into that stuff. We'll get into like, well, you said this here, and then I'll start to discuss the data, and I'll say like, well, I saw this, I saw that, and this is why I came to this conclusion. And they're like, well, what about that? And I'd be like, that's an interesting idea. So I want to see more of that in the industry. I want to kind of see us really talking about these things to get deeper to the truth.
Yeah. I think that's a healthy place to be. I think in the industry, we need to be transparent. We need to, if we are going to say, hey, 80% insider threat, blah, 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 whatever, then whoever that is, needs to back that up. It's kind of like what Jason asked a minute ago with the whole phishing and how do you count an insider versus not, or malicious insider. Like, help me understand the definition of that. Then I can understand the severity or, the magnitude of that problem.
So I was the answer to your question before you even knew it, because like I asked about that.
Was that
feeling like a prophet here?
Hang on, I'm gonna kind of connect the dots here a little bit. Jason asked you a question that people don't normally should ask or shouldn't ask or whatever, and then your answer, Ray, was the answer that Jason just asked you earlier.
I don't want to claim to be Darth Sidious here. But,
I don't know how deep we just got down the rabbit hole right there. So. My mind is kind of just exploded for a second. I'm sorry. Good to go, man. No, but that's great. I mean, it's like, hey, call. I won't say call me out, but ask me, as it were, where did I get this data? And whoever the threat researcher is ought to be able to give you that and should welcome that question, frankly. So that's great.
Yeah. Well, and even for the thing of our time with COVID-19. All the data surrounding that, and it's like question everything with is it coming from reputable sources? Because you see all these charts every day on social media, and it's like, where in the world did you come up with that data? Because none of that aligns with the stats I'm running from the the COVID-19 GitHub repo where they're publishing everything every day, and so. It's
I apply that same rigor I do with a lot of security research. It's like, I want to see the per capita. You give me hard numbers, like we saw 14 cases here. I'm like, 14 out of how many people?
Right.
Who tested negative, who tested positive? It doesn't tell me anything.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of that thrown around.
What percentage of your people did you actually test? Because that plays a role in that too.
Yeah. That's why I love, that's one of the great things I love about F5 Labs. Like you said, you're not in this, you don't have an agenda. You're just saying, hey, we want to be very transparent. We're not here to sell you another F5 thing or widget or whatever. We're here to give you our agenda is to improve security across the land. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. So if there is an agenda, it's a very good one. It's a very reputable one. So, hey, so maybe, and I know we're kind of coming up on a little bit of time here. We don't want to take too much of your time, but there is one question I wanted to ask about interesting malware or interesting threats. I know we talked about phishing. You talked about MageCart. I didn't know if there were some other ones. You know, when you talk to the director of F5 Labs, and inevitably I am included in this, people want to know, hey, what's the crazy, next Hollywood script movie stuff that's going on out there? Is there anything crazy that we need to keep our head on a swivel for right now, Ray? Or is it just hey, the same stuff keeps going on and that's the world we live in?
There's a lot of the same stuff going on, but there's some crazy new stuff. It's stuff that it's also, when you kind of tear the hood off, you're like, oh, really? That is kind of ordinary, but we're doing a lot more reporting on API hacking.
Okay.
There have been some breaches around API, but there's been a lot more, we call them incidents. They're not, not necessarily a breach, but it's like a terrible vulnerability or they've had to patch, or it's like this could have happened, but it didn't happen. And basically it's a lot more folks are shoving things into the cloud without really kind of thinking about how this should be configured, or a lot of apps now are being broken into pieces. So this isn't just like a monolithic app where we're loading an app is really more like the sort of a cloud of different things all talking to each other. And the things that they're all talking to each other are APIs.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we move that more to the internet and more to the cloud, all those APIs are exposed. And every one of those is a root level login to something else.
Mm.
And the stuff is leaking, and things can get broken and things can get taken down. And that's why we kind of started this whole educational effort around API, especially in other parts of the world. It's kind of going gangbusters, and the different flavors of saying like, well, what's an API? If you go into like what REST is and all the different ways that people are using it. There's a lot of kind of interesting, crazy things that we're seeing that it's like, does anybody care about security here?
Yeah.
Or do we have to relearn the same old lessons we've learned?
Is it an afterthought?
It comes out, so
yeah,
keep an eye on it. We'll have some interesting stories coming out in that area.
Yeah, I'm starting to dig in a little bit into containers more and more, just playing with some personal projects, and that's another like mystical black box. You're just like, okay, well that's set up. How did that get set up, and what packages are on that image I just downloaded? Because
to each other.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, that's running a whole lot of daemons I don't need for my particular use case, and so you get into the process. Okay, I'm going to strip down this image, do exactly what I need, and to help on the performance side, but also on the security side, because less threat landscape is better.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. If anything else, the more you can reduce your footprint, the better you are. It's less work. It's less things that can get attacked. It's less money you have to spend locking things down or monitoring things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stuxnet is probably still the bar for me as far as like mind-blowing complexity of attack vectors, and I mean it's just crazy the level of planning and all that went into that to accomplish a single goal.
I wish I could talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Stuxnet was amazing. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah, there's a lot of, it's amazing like the creativity that attackers go to, but it also makes sense just as a human being that it's like you said, the low hanging fruit with phishing. If there's something that just keeps working, if I'm an attacker, I'm just going to use it. Right.
Yeah.
And
or even the article that you and I were reading about the WannaCry, the guy who stopped the WannaCry.
Yeah.
It's like this incredibly invasive worm that was stopped by registering a domain. And
all the bad guys are pretty bad at OPSEC. If you read through a lot of these cases, it's just like, oh, you're fall victim to the same thing that you attack people with. It's just like stuff mistakes.
Yeah. 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 It's an amazing world we live in, man. Well, this is I tell you, to have a chance to kind of dig into this and talk through it has been a pleasure. And to know like that F5 Labs is out there, doing all the great threat research. There's some like amazing minds that work on your team. You're one of them, of course. And also to know that you guys have really gotten into like the CISO to CISO stuff. So it's kind of that more executive level, but also the education and training piece for the collective good of the whole world, really, that we can all know what's going on around us. So I would just say thank you for the work that you guys are doing. And I would encourage everybody to get out there and check out F5 Labs. So this has been awesome, man. Well, Ray, it's been a pleasure, man. I feel like it's been what, 30 plus minutes that we've had with you. I feel like we just kind of got started. I've got a million other questions, but maybe we can run this back on another DevCentral Connect show one day.
Oh, or get some of our other researchers on too. I'm not the smartest one on the team, so.
Well, hey, yeah, you could have fooled me, Ray. You could have fooled me. I was thinking, who is smarter than Ray Pompon, right? Good to go. Well, Ray, thanks again, man. It's been a real pleasure to have you, and again, thanks for all the great work you're doing at F5 Labs.
Yep. Appreciate you joining us, Ray.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right, that was awesome.
Ray is awesome, man. What a great mind. What a great mind.
All right. So what's next on tap here,
so
John?
as we kind of transition, we talked about attacks and threats and all that kind of stuff, and at the heart of that is code that runs either malicious activity or code can be a very good thing, of course. I mean, it starts to run our lives. So one thing that F5 has started recently is this initiative called Code Connects Us All, and whether that's computer code or maybe other types of code, at the heart of it all, there is a code that connects all of us humans. So there's a really quick kind of a promo or video that we wanted to highlight really quick and let everyone watch.
For me, Code Connects Us All. It basically reminds me of how human we are. It reminds me of the DNA we all have in common as humans, and how that really brings us back to the concept of just collaborating with each other.
Code has allowed me to reconnect with my family on the other side of the world. So thanks to the code, I now have an extended family in Argentina and know my roots.
And code isn't just a bunch of languages that let us program software. It's your right. It's what you live by. And sometimes it takes a little QA and some serious debugging to get the best code possible. But let's be honest, without the people and the choices behind us, code is nothing. So let's make good choices, because the code around us, fire codes, health codes, and even security codes, they all keep us safe, bring us together, and give us peace of mind.
The code that powers the technology in our phones and apps opens up new ways to communicate, learn, and connect people all around the world. And that's how I see code connecting us all.
So code connects us all. That's really cool. I appreciate all the F5 employees there that contributed to that video. And it was, I don't know, to me, it kind of stands out that, on one example, there was one person who is now connected to their family in Argentina, and it's like, hey, there's computer code that allows that to happen, that human connection. And then the other one that talked about, like, there's fire codes and safety codes, and so there's a lot of different kinds of code, but at the heart of it, it's what brings us together. So it's a really cool thing.
Actually, I have a really great story about that before we jump back into our agility recap.
Yeah.
And when I was a customer before I came to F5, we had an IT organization that was pretty large. We were over 1,000 employees, and we were very siloed. We had a network team, a systems team, application developers team, security teams, and everybody was very, very siloed, and the director level reports were fairly protective of the assets that they owned. And so, when I brought F5 in the door for our application delivery, it was a load balancer, and it was allowed to be a load balancer. And it was for it being a load balancer, it was a fairly expensive load balancer because it does a lot more than that.
Right.
And so as I learned the product a little bit more, I had some experience coming in, but it was shortly after the switch to version 9 and the new TMOS platform and all of that. And I learned of some really powerful things like guy rules and all that. And one of the groups had a big problem with they had an Apache plugin for WebSphere, and it was end of life. They weren't going to support it anymore. but our entire platform was built on that. And so the web tier as it existed had to change. And they didn't really see a path forward to do that. And so I started to kind of look at what that plugin did. And I said, I could totally build that in an iRule. And so I, reached out to my director, and he's like, have you told anybody this? And I said, no. It's like, if you tell anybody this, I'm going to fire you. And it was, that kind of,
wow.
Yeah, that kind of segmentation. But then he started talking to peers in the other groups, and then they said, okay, well, maybe we'll at least investigate it. And we had a pretty mature test environment. And so we went into that, and, 3 months later, we deployed to prod, and they were able to, move forward servers after that had been sitting there 9 months without security updates, because they could not move the server forward, or it would have broken the plugin that was behind. And so, I say all of that to say, that code, the iRules that we developed, really brought 3 distinct non-allowed to work together groups together, and it opened the door for collaboration going forward. And so that in that case, that code really did connect us all.
It connected us all, the entire organization. Yeah. So it's a powerful thing, So yeah, I guess we want everyone to start thinking about code. Number one, because I know F5 is really pushing hard to grow in the software space and in the coding space. But it's more than that. It's more than just lines of code. It's it's everything we've talked about. So it's something cool to think about, just kind of as we go through our lives and our jobs, on how do different codes connect, and there's really a lot of truth to that. So anyway, so with that, we want to talk about agility. Agility this year was a little different, right, Jason?
It was, yeah. Unfortunately, we were not allowed to be together this year. I was looking forward to the House of Mouse and being down in Orlando and checking out the new Star Wars land and building a lightsaber and all that fun stuff. And that didn't happen for any of us. And so, kind of bummed out about that. But we did have virtual agility last week, and we had, keynotes every day. We had demos and breakouts, and it was a good time. We also did live stream daily.
That's
at
right.
10 a.m. Pacific, noon Central, where John and I are. And that was great. We got to hang out with everybody who was attending agility. We had a lot of discussions, relevant to the content at agility, but also just, about some other technology and about some nonsense that didn't matter, and, Star Trek and Star Wars and what side of the fence you're on. Although, I'm sorry, if it does matter to you, no offense meant.
Right. And, we talked about insider threats and all that a few minutes ago with Ray. And I think we had a discussion on, if we were to talk about Star Wars specifically, were there any insiders that were threatening there? And so we were able to kind of tie all that stuff together. But one of the things we talked about agility is some of the things that we love about agility, right? Just the traditional agility when we're there together in person. And one of the things that I think it was on both of our top 3 lists was the fun run that we get to take part in every single year. So if I remember right, that was one of yours. That was definitely one of mine.
It was, yeah. The fun run is, I was like, I am not a runner, and I've probably had a runner's high maybe 2-3 times in all my years of starting and stopping the Couch to 5K program. But in my late 20s, I decided to get in shape, and I lost a ton of weight and could run 6 miles a day. And I was running through the streets of, I forget what town it is on the coast of New Hampshire, but we went whale watching there, and I left the hotel on a 30-minute run, and I was gone almost 2 hours because I didn't know I was gone that long, because I had my runner's high. So that's one of the very few times I've had a runner's high. But yes, fun run has been a highlight. The trip in Central Park. But I had a little, since we can't actually be in person to do a fun run, had a little clip for you. All right. right. So
So,
that was 3 years. That was 2016, 17, and 18.
I was going to say that was a compilation of a few. That was Boston and Chicago and Chicago.
Yeah. And the little F5 shakers. Which I brought some of those home. Whoever the swag people are out there, I want one of those. Yeah, we'll put it right here on the desk, and we'll just have it go in the whole show.
We need more shaker in our life, but that's a lot of fun. We talked about the fun run. So, and we mentioned this at the Agility live stream too. But the next Agility, we're told, is we're going to do everything we can to be in person. We don't have a date yet or a location just yet, but it's coming, and we look forward to seeing everybody in person. And we'll have another fun run. And we really try to put the fun in the run, So,
and if you haven't registered and seen the content from last week, there's some really great breakouts and keynotes in there. A couple of my favorite were the integrating CI/CD or security into your CI/CD tool chain. That one's really good. Beyond the castle walls was also. I don't think it was
the castle walls have fallen.
That's it. Yeah, the castle walls have fallen.
Like zero trust kind of stuff. You can't trust anybody anymore,
Yeah. So those two in particular, I really, really liked. But all of it's good.
Yeah, it was really cool. And I know maybe a little recap on some of the keynotes as well, talking about delivering applications from code to customer, securing applications, and then some of the architecture behind all that. I thought a couple of the cool stories that Gang, our CTO, told on the third day keynote, where there's an airline that does, like, I think 60% of its revenue comes from its online web application, and then I think they're it's a crazy huge airline company. I think it's like $20 billion or something like that. But they were able.
A lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. But there was an issue that people had with going in there to maybe find a flight or whatever, but before they click, purchase or book or whatever, then the secure session, the session itself, would time out. And so then they would lose, X number of dollars or X% revenue because of this session timeout problem that was just creating frustration for their customers. And so F5, together with some technology from Shape, the new Shape team that we've got, was able to implement some really cool session timeout like intelligence into their web application. And so they saw like a 2% increase in their revenue without any kind of security issues, that were introduced on that. But 2% of the revenue, that equated to like $40 million a year that they were able to realize just because of this cool little session timeout issue that they implemented. So I don't know.
That is not pocket change.
No, it is not. But it's I think as we dig more into speaking of Shape, what Shape does and the artificial intelligence that they bring, and just there's some super cool technology that the Shape team has been able to develop, and now we can start to fully integrate with all the other FI products.
Yeah, really and if you look at what FI Beacon is trying to do from a visibility standpoint as well, Kara was talking about that matrix of not only do you have your traditional and your 3-tier and your microservices, you're in that she had a slide with vertically those different types of architectures, but then also just all the different stops along the way from code to customer, and you get this really complex matrix of performance issues, security issues, vendor compliance and bugs and all these different things that you have to solve. What kind of visibility do you have in that entire span of architecture and hops for all of your different services? And it's good to have something to roll all of that up to have a single pane of glass view into performance and security and analytics type things that you can not just see but act on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on down there. There's a lot of parts and pieces that make up modern web applications. Kind of like what Ray talked about earlier with, you used to have the monolithic, this beast of an app, and now it's more microservices. It's all that talking to each other and APIs exposed and everything he talked about. So it's just a different world. But to maintain visibility over all that, man, how in the world do you do that? I got 10,000 different parts and pieces to this monster of an application. I don't know what's going on is kind of the idea that goes on out there. And so, yeah, some of the technology like Beacon that F5 provides is super cool stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and you have applications that are part of other applications, a part of other applications, and
I feel like we're in that movie
responsible for this one,
yeah,
and not this one, and then how do you roll that up to eventually, this is my application system, and I am the owner, and I need to see it all.
you see it all. That's right. I feel like we're in that Inception movie. You remember that with Leonardo DiCaprio and layers of dreams,
little
and
cube
like,
to spin.
what just happened? Yeah, and the top at the top at the end, if you remember seeing the very end, it's like if it fell over, then I think he was good to go, like he wasn't in a dream. But if it kept spinning, he was in the dream.
Yeah.
And at the end, it kind of like wobbled a little bit, and then the screen went black, and you're like, wait a minute, I don't know. Keep going, man. Tell me. So anyway, yeah, but just some super cool stuff with agility, and like I said, it's out there on demand, so you can go back and watch the demos and the keynotes and the breakouts and all that stuff. So it'll be out there for all to see.
Yep.
So good times, man. Well, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you haven't seen that in the 10 years you've had to see it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So maybe you can highlight that one. Yeah. Pytel said, spoiler alert, talking about Inception. Yeah.
Right.
I feel like the the threshold has been met, right?
Yep.
If it's 10 years or older, then spoiler. Sorry, I should have said that at the beginning. But good to go.
Well, we had another thing on our agenda today, and that was a demo of the Campfire app. And I even created a nice little banner here, the preferred mechanisms for turning logs into flames. And the point of my demo was that, for the longest time, iRules, troubleshooting them from a data and a performance perspective, you have fairly rudimentary tools to do that. In version 13, iRule tracing was introduced that would allow you to set up different things that you want to track, whether you want to track specific events or all the events within an iRule, different contexts within an event. And so that was introduced in 13.1. I'll clarify. But that was able to, you can configure that, you can send that. The problem is it goes into log files, and if you don't know how to consume those log files, or maybe visualize those log files in a way that's helpful, maybe it's not all that useful. And so the Campfire tool, again, it turns logs into flames. So they thought, hey, cute little name, and so Campfire it is. And so it uses a tool called Flame Graph that will generate just a visible clue as to maybe where some of your performance issues are. But there's two components to it. It's data and performance. And so my laptop's been crashing the entire show. I've been trying to get to a point to where I could use it, but even while we're talking about other stuff, it's crashed 3 times since the beginning of the live stream. So not going to try to do that today, and we're running up on time anyway. But we will do that in the future once I get my tech stuff figured out. Maybe we'll push that to next week, and we can do a deep dive on that.
Yeah. So maybe like I know Daniel Edgar a minute ago loved the IT crowd background. So we joked about Jason's computer turning itself off and back on, right?
Yeah.
So good to go.
Yep.
Well, yeah. So I just wanted to say thanks again to Ray Pompon for educating us all on F5 Labs and what they do and the great work that just goes on with that team every single day. It's good to know that, like I said, sometimes I come into this that, hey, there's all these really cool, sophisticated, brand new approaches to hacking and attacking and all that. And while some of that is true, the predominance of it all is that the tried and true methods of phishing and social engineering and just some of that kind of stuff, that's where the attackers go to. And like he even said, I mean, some of these nation state actors, these advanced persistent threats, they start off with a spear phishing attack because that's what works. And it's like, why build this massive, tool when you can just use the simple little one and it still works. So I appreciate that insight that he brought to us.
Me too. It was great to have him. Look forward to having him in the future as we dig into maybe some more specific attacks that are coming down the pipe.
Yep. That's awesome, man. Well, hey, everybody. It's been a great time on DevCentral Connects again today. I appreciate you joining us all. We're going to be back here next Thursday with another live show and interact with all of you. It's been really cool to have this time especially in kind of a quarantine world that we live in, where you don't get that human to human interaction as much. At least we can have this on DevCentral Connects, and we can still stay connected to all of you. So it's been fun, and we look forward to doing it again next week.
Absolutely. Have a safe week, guys. We'll see you next week.